don't know, I admitted. Maybe if you slept on it, said Bess. Yeah, said George. Let's go back to the hotel. We'll get some sleep and pick this back up again in a few hours. I looked at George quickly. Wait, I said. The mention of the Elder Root Inn had given me an idea, had reminded me of someone else who must have been involved in all this. We should go back to the hotel, but not to sleep. I took off down the sidewalk, and after a moment I could hear Bess and George behind me, jogging to catch up. George let out a groan. Nancy? Asked Bess. She didn't sound any happier about suddenly having to run. What are you talking about? We have one more person to question, I said. Jacob's girlfriend, Emily. Bess, George, and I made it back to the hotel as quickly as we could, considering it was a fairly long walk and we were all running on such small amounts of sleep. Eventually, we made it up to the second floor, and I remembered which room had been Emily's. Room 212. The three of us stood outside Emily's door, and I knocked on it. Emily had said I could stop by if I ever had any more questions for her, but I was fairly certain she hadn't meant I could stop by this early in the morning. It wasn't even 8 o'clock yet, and I wasn't sure if she would be awake. To my surprise, the door opened and revealed that Emily was fully dressed. She looked nervous as she peeked out the door, but when she saw us, she breathed what appeared to be a sigh of relief. Nancy, she said, her shoulders slumping. Sorry, I was expecting... Never mind. She shook her head. Come in, quickly. Emily gestured us all inside. In a direct contrast to how sleepy Bess and George were, Emily seemed to be full of energy. As soon as we were all in the room, she began rushing around the small space. It took me a moment to realize that the room wasn't just messy like it had been last time. This time, Emily was quickly packing. Are you leaving? I asked her. I stood in the middle of the room as Emily bustled around me. Bess and George found the only chair not covered in clothing, a cushioned one just underneath the window, and they both slumped down into it. They were practically sitting on top of each other, and they appeared to be half asleep within seconds. Well, said Emily. Yes, I'm leaving. Honestly, Nancy, I thought you were the police a few seconds ago, and I really can't talk to them. Emily, wait, I said. Why can't you talk to the police? For a moment, I wondered if Emily could be the one behind everything, the one telling Grace and Jacob what to do. But really, it just didn't seem likely. Emily had already offered me so much information about the case and had said she'd be happy to talk to me whenever. She seemed as though she had enjoyed all the attention she'd been receiving this week, but she just didn't seem malicious enough to stage a kidnapping and frame an innocent person. There's someone else involved in all this, she said. Her eyes widened, as if she was surprised by her own admission. They'd be so mad at me if I said anything. They're already mad about Grace and Jacob getting caught by the police. I felt a jolt of adrenaline running through me. I had been right about another person being involved, and Emily knew just who that other person was. Emily, I said, trying to keep my voice as steady as possible. Who would be mad at you if you said anything to the police? Emily hadn't stopped moving since Bess, George, and I had entered the room. Now she was nearly finished packing. She looked at me as she was zipping up her suitcase and said, No way. Sorry, Nancy, but I can't tell you that. I wasn't sure what to do. Emily was the only lead I had, and I had no idea how to convince her to tell me anything. Perhaps Emily was actually a fairly decent person who'd gotten wrapped up in something not very decent at all. Emily, please, I said. This is really important. Then I remembered why she was even part of the recent events. Jacob's your boyfriend, I said. He and Grace are going to be blamed for all this unless I can figure out who else is behind those photographs. Emily rolled her eyes. Jacob is not my boyfriend, she said. We just go to school together. I guess the original plan was only to have Grace go missing. They thought the police would shut down the exhibit immediately, but the police just thought it was a hoax and no one in town really cared because Grace hadn't been here for that long and no one knew anything about her. It was easy for everyone to believe that she had just gone back to where she came from. So Jacob was going to pretend to go missing too. He hoped it would scare more people in town if they thought the curse could apply to anyone who even went near the photographs, not just the people involved in displaying them. And this time, they also wanted someone to hype everyone up about it. And that's where you came in, I supplied. Emily nodded. I'm a theater major. They needed someone who could act scared and hopefully frighten everyone in town enough that the police would be forced to act as soon as possible. Emily, why would you go along with this? I asked. It seems like a huge risk for you. Jacob said he could pay me, said Emily, shrugging. He said something about a will and that he would have plenty of money once this was all done. I have student loans to think about, and this is sort of an acting gig, so I said yes. A will? Whose will? Emily pulled her suitcase down from where it had been resting on her bed. Her hand was wrapped around the handle, and she was just about ready to leave the room and end our conversation. I really can't say anything, she said, shaking her head. She actually did look sorry about it. But I can give you a hint. At this point, I was willing to take anything I could get. Of course, I said. Anything. Emily looked around, as if there was someone who could possibly overhear us. I wasn't even sure if Bess and George were listening to us at this point. They were both so out of it. The person who set all this up, they wrote their name down somewhere, said Emily. It's the only trail